Testing. That one works. Yep.
Thank you, Brian. All right, I'm going to call the meeting, the South Kingstown School Building Committee meeting to order at 4:04. And we'll do a roll call. We'll start over on this side. Brian Silva. Kate Massananti, I'm here. Brian Mahoney.
Here.
Luke Murray.
Here.
Terry Lynch.
Here.
Chip McGarr.
Here.
Jim Manny.
Here.
And we have Chris Spiegel from Left Fields. Bob Littlefield is on his way. And Dave Palizzetti is away. All right, so our first item, recommendation from construction manager selection team. So Chris from Left Field, if you could just kind of give us a quick summary of what went on and then let us know the recommendation path forward.
So thank you, everyone. As this group is aware, we had a public procurement for construction manager. This was publicly bid with the help of Julie Mason and the town of South Kingstown's procurement office. We had 5 firms submit bids: Downs Construction, Dimeo, Gilbane Building Company, Shawmut Design and Construction, and ONG Industries. After a thorough review of qualifications, the construction manager selection team recommended Dimeo, Gilbane, and Shawmut to move on to the interview round. As this group, again, is aware, it is our practice to send questions ahead of time to these construction management firms. These questions are specific to South Kingstown. They discuss capacity. They discuss why their team was specifically chosen. They also discuss how they plan on bringing the project on budget in terms of the exaggerated lead times as well as the current pricing in the industry. All firms presented very, very well. I attended all of the interview sessions myself, and there were some great questions asked by our group. And overall, it was a very engaged group. It was also a very highly technical group. Probably the most technically sophisticated construction management selection team I've ever worked with in terms of the quality of candidates we had from South Kingstown. After interviews, it was determined that Gilbane Building Company was recommended by the construction manager selection team to this group for their review and approval.
Can you remind me? So we had a selection team that picked who to interview, and then those same folks did the interview. Is that correct?
That's correct. The construction manager selection team had control of this process in terms of review from the moment the proposals were submitted until after the interviews. I would also say that all scores were sent directly to me. Scores were not discussed in a group setting at any time. Their scores were sent to me. I entered them into our matrix, and that's how we ended up shortlisting, as well as during the construction manager after the interviews as well. And again, although all firms submitted performed incredibly well during our presentation, there was a clear winner with Gilbane Building Company coming in as the top-ranked firm. They were the top-ranked firm for every single reviewer as well.
Does anybody have any questions?
So I'm sure there's going to be some people watching this that maybe for the first time or missed the selection team. So I'd like to have Chris just go over the 7 members. He doesn't have to go by name, just their title and how they were chosen, and that the town council formed, this team. Okay.
So great. So in terms of how the construction manager team was selected, is we solicited applications from the community. This solicitation was posted on the town's website, as well as I believe the town's social media as well. It was also put out on the project website. There was an application link there, and we also send out to about 120 people that are signed up for email updates through the project website. They were selected as well. We had a public, the construction manager selection team was made up of 2 members of this school building committee. One member of the town council, that member was Councilman Sweet. In terms of the school building committee, we had Chip and David Paulzetti, who were on the firm for them. And then we had 4 members of the community. As this was publicly already shared before, I don't have an issue sharing their names now. One was Andrew Meller, one was Renee Driscoll, Sarah Brown, and Robert Cognetta. In terms of their qualifications, Mr. Meller is an estimator at a very large construction management firm, Turner. Robert Cagnetta owns his own historic preservation and construction firm and has worked with a lot of the large CMs in Rhode Island. Ms. Brown is a capital projects manager at Northeastern University. They do some pretty significant construction projects there. And Ms. Driscoll is in-house on the business development team for AZ, which is another large construction management firm. They don't necessarily do schoolwork, but South County Hospital is an example of a project that A to Z did, and Left Field has a lot of respect for them. We poached a few of their members to join our team as well. Renee made sure to get that dig in during one of our meetings. As I said, an incredibly technically qualified committee to be reviewing these. Did that answer, Jim? Okay.
Thank you.
So the recommended motion today would be that the school building committee advance Gilbane Building Company as the construction manager for this work to the school committee for their approval.
Does anybody have any other questions, comments, or concerns?
So, I don't know why. There was a pricing component separate of this, right? Can you just go over the pricing for Gilbane?
Sorry. In terms of the shortlisted firms, the lowest bid was Dimeo at $9,302,312. Gilbane came in second at $9,598,733, and Shawmut placed last at $9,629,051. You know, we do this based on points, so it's a percentage of the, and in terms of points, really not much of a difference. So 15.95 points for Dimeo, 15.46 points for Gilbane, and 15.41 points for Shawmut. Not a differentiator at all in terms of price. And, you know, to have only a $300,000 spread on a $150 million project is incredibly tight pricing, and we feel very comfortable with it. And I should also just mention what is included in that price. So it is the fee for doing the work. As this group remembers, construction manager as opposed to general contractor, construction managers charge a fee for their work. They do not mark up any subcontractor trades costs. That's the main difference in terms of how pricing is scheduled for these. So with a general contractor, you don't necessarily see your trade costs. So there could potentially be a benefit in trade costs coming in higher because then the markup on those is also higher. With a construction manager, they make the same amount of money if the project comes in lower, significantly lower under budget. It's actually in their best interest for the project to come in under budget because they don't make any additional money with that. And then the other that's included in this is their general conditions. These are the conditions for the site, things like their supervision of the site, their staffing, security fencing, trailers, all of that sort of stuff is included in general conditions, and I can provide a much bigger breakdown if you would all like. But again, it's also their staffing, their internal staffing, their on-site staffing. So it's an encompassing number. It's not just, this is not just their profit. I want to make that clear that this is not their profit. It's multiple things that are included in this.
So the score for Dimeo Construction was what again, please?
15.95 points for,
Out of how many points?
out of 20.
Out of 20. And Gilbane was what, please?
15.46 out of 20 on score on cash.
And Shawmut?
15.41.
So Dimeo had the lowest price and the highest score. So why didn't they get it?
Because it's over across a number of categories. So it's also, oh, sorry. So the main reason for that is because price only makes up 20 points out of a total point value of, give me 1 second here, out of a total point value of 156 points. So they made up that 1 point difference in their qualifications, in their interview scores, in their contract comments. We review them across a number of metrics. Their references, as an example. So just as an example of all the different categories we review them on.
So the price I get, but the overall score was higher for Demio.
So yes, so the overall score, Gilbane was the overall leader by 12 points.
Chris, could you just, if you can you list each score, just so we have that? I think that'll clarify what we're looking at. The overall for all the 10 points or whatever, 10 categories.
Oh, sure.
So just to clarify, Luke brought up the score that you just gave me, where they were the high score, was just for pricing only.
Correct.
Not the overall score.
Yes,
Okay.
just for pricing only.
So if we could have the overall score, just so that everybody is clear that what the overall scores were.
So Gilbane's overall score was 97.03, Shawmet's was 93.97, and Demio's was 88.65.
Thank you.
Chris, one more question for you. Just, I know you've talked a lot about how attractive this project was in the open market from your perspective. Do you see that being a reflection of why these prices came in so similar? I mean, I do much smaller bids than this, and I give you an example. We had a fencing project for one of the athletic fields. I had a bid for $4,000, I had a bid for $9,000, I had a bid for $13,000, all for a fence pretty much. So is that showing kind of why they all want this project?
So I think there's a number of reasons why this project is very attractive. First is your budget. You have a budget that's not going to require us to go through the project with a red pen. The industry term is bleed all over the drawings and cut segments of the project out to make budget. But where that becomes very attractive for the construction managers is that means we can get in the ground faster because we're not going to spend a year and a half value managing the building. There's also some other things that make this project very attractive. You have a relatively flat site. You've got a very qualified school building committee. I think that in general, this is a good group to work with. And I think for a lot of other firms too, it's in a different part of the state than a lot of the other work is going on. So it makes sense on their personnel basis. There's a number of reasons why this project is attractive and why we saw more firms submit on this project than on Warwick, as an example. There's just some different things about this project that make it pretty attractive. But in terms of why their pricing is so close together, I think that really has to do with the amount of work that's been going out in Rhode Island and all of the construction managers seeing everybody else's numbers. So they've seen where people come in, they've seen what people are charging for fees, they've seen what people are charging for their supervision, what their good general conditions include. And so they're pretty familiar with where everybody is, and they're trying to make their numbers very competitive. I think another thing that also helps out this project is we have a pretty advanced set of schematic design drawings. I mean, we could theoretically submit to RIDE right now. We've got a lot of work to do before we do so, but with a very detailed and complete set of drawings, you're not making as many assumptions about what is going to need to go here, what is going to need to go here, so it allows you to be more competitive in your pricing, right? The unknowns are what costs money on a project is a good way of saying it.
Good.
It's really a question for Chip, because you were on the committee, and I know you said it on the interviews. The team from Gilbane, I'm assuming they brought the team that they would be assigning to the project, and then along with that, what was your thought specifically on that team and how we'd be able to work with them, why they were attractive?
Yes, I'd start by saying thank you to all three companies. It was impressive. I learned a lot. I was probably the least technical person on that by like a landslide, but I was happy to be there because I think I learned a ton from it. It was interesting to see the thoughts that all three companies had and about our project, and I agree with Chris. It came across as like it's a very attractive project, and they can do a lot in places where they feel that we could make adjustments and realize cost savings here, so it could be applied to something else, and without giving anything up. Really, it was That's the stuff I probably learned the most. But I agree Gilbane was the clear-cut winner. I think they just felt like their ties to the community, the way they were going to match with us. I'd heard time and time again that you're especially as like the building principal, you're going to spend a lot of time with these people, and if you're feeling comfortable, like we can have an honest working relationship. And not to say that there wasn't some of that in the others, but that's what really stuck out to me was how much I felt like, wow, we can absolutely work with these people. And I thought they were going to fit in well with Studio Jade and Slam and with Left Field, and it just felt like, I feel like we have a team here, and with the work that Phil and Chris have done, and then I felt like we were just adding more people onto our team, and that it was just going to be a really strong team. So that was certainly something that I was happy about.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? I am curious if people wanted to view, were these recorded and live streamed?
They were live streamed, they were recorded. I can post them to the project website, as well as the matrix, which shows the scores. I'll post that to the website as well.
And does it live on the school building committee YouTube, or?
Yes, it does. I may have to relabel it. I'll double check, but it is on there. We live streamed it from the chambers, so.
They were, like I said, it's actually really good watching. Didn't drift off once. They were really engaged the entire time.
It did go by very fast.
It did.
Seriously, all
we
3
actually
hours.
said that. We said it's gone by really fast.
It was impressive across the board for all 3 presentations.
Great. Does anybody have any final thoughts? So next step, a letter is going to go to the...
Well, I'll make a motion to forward a positive recommendation for Gilbane for construction manager at Risk Services to the town council.
Does it need to go through school committee first?
That's a good question. I don't know, as a matter of process. The money would come through the town. It would be a purchasing request, so I would be inclined to say no unless there's some ride requirement I'm unaware of.
There is.
Bob, do you know?
Yeah, there's not a ride requirement.
So we've not come this far before.
Phil,
So I
Phil,
don't
do you
know.
have any input on this, of where you think, based on your experience?
It's not. Oh, sorry. So it's nice for Gilbane's prepared to start work right away, and they will work off a notice off of what we're doing here today, off a notice to proceed. I'm sure at risk. It is nice, though, to have everybody rowing. We've been saying this all along, to have everybody rowing in the same direction, even if it's not meaningful. I think that the school committee, listening to everything that I've said today and being able to present the same information to them, I think it would just kind of continue this everybody rowing in the same direction spirit.
That one.
What's happening?
This is fine. On that question of whether or not this should go to the school committee first, I don't want to speak for the committee, but we're going to post our agenda for Tuesday's meeting tomorrow afternoon. We've got a school committee. We have a school building committee update already on the agenda. I see no reason why that it could not go to the school committee for their consideration. Just the more opportunities that we have to be open and transparent and participatory, I think the better off we're all going to be.
I'd like to add to that. Transparency is everything here. We can never forget there were several thousand people that did not vote for this project, so all eyes are on us to make sure that everything's on a level, which we know it is, and transparent. Every opportunity we get to either bring it before the school committee or the town council, I would highly recommend that, out of an abundance of caution.
And maybe it's not official, maybe it's just a resolution of support for school building committees as opposed to an official.
Does it work? Okay, got it. Table. Yeah, they're all kind of acting a little flaky right now. So there's a motion on the table. Are you amending it, you said?
Yeah, I can amend the motion to forward a positive recommendation onto the school committee for consideration. Because I'm assuming they would take it from there, make a positive recommendation to the council. So we would bounce it to school committee first.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Alrighty, that motion passes. It must be my energy, town manager Manny. All right, so that motion passes. Who will you be drafting or who from our committee?
I will send you a package
Okay.
tomorrow before noon that you guys can include with your agenda, which will have the matrix. It will have left field's recommendation as well.
Okay.
And we'll summarize what was said here today for that item.
All right, so on to business item number 4, discussion general project overview.
Great. So I guess the elephant in the room is the bond passed on Tuesday with 55% of the vote to 45% of the vote, a difference of about 700 votes with record voter turnout. So I think we should be proud of the fact that so many people were engaged with this project and decided to come out one way or the other. It's in terms of civic engagement, I think it was very, very well done. As Town Manager Manny said, however, there's a significant amount of people here in South Kingstown that didn't vote for this project, and I think moving forward, we need to make sure that we're continuing to hear their concerns, especially when it comes to budget, as well as logistics around construction, as well as making sure that we maintain, as much as we can, the environmentally friendly nature of the Columbia School Street site. So those are all concerns that we need to carry forward into the project. In terms of our most immediate next steps, besides the technical parts of bringing on the construction manager, is Phil Conti, as well as the SLAM Collaborative, are going to need to be having an educational programming due diligence review with school department stakeholders. Chip and I have already talked about. We don't have much time before school lets out, so we would like to get those meetings scheduled ASAP. Those meetings are not going to be as intensive as the visioning that was done during stage 2. This is really for us to meet with stakeholders. As an example, music and art and science and occupational therapy and special education, and to make sure that we understand the requirements in full, that we've designed spaces that align with the educational programming that they're trying to teach, and as well as we're also getting into a little bit more detail, right? I know I received an email from Brian today that teachers are already starting to say, well, I want these bays to look like this, and I want this to look like this, and this is how it supports. We need to do the due diligence to make sure that we're thinking about that as we further design the building. We do need to remember that this is going to be a schematic design submission, probably sometime in July, August. So after schematic design, then we do another round of an even deeper dive. And this is where we talk to teachers and say, how much storage would you like? Do you want it to be lockable? What type of furniture do you want? They get more granular as we get further on in the design. But the first step is for us to confirm that educational programming, because once we do so, we've confirmed the building footprint. Now we can release the mechanical engineers to start their work. We can release the structural engineers to start their work. We can release some of these bigger packages to start their work. And we'll further refine it as we go on. So those are the most immediate steps. Phil, did I leave out anything? Okay. I've done this several times, actually with Phil and SLAM recently. They do a great job at this. One thing that we do also need to be mindful of is managing expectations. We do not want to overpromise and underdeliver. So we want to make sure that left field likes to be in the room during these conversations. Architects are great at designing what people want. Sometimes you need someone to be there to pull it back a little bit and say, we need to bring this on budget, so let's be mindful of that. The next, after... Sure.
Questions come up in my office a couple of times. The acronym SLAM, what does that stand for?
I'm sure it was people's names a long time ago. Yeah. Yeah, actually. Yeah.
All right, so explain what the SLAM Collaborative is, what encompasses that then? Studio Jade, right?
So I'll start while Phil finishes off. So SLAM Collaborative is a separate architectural practice from Studio Jade. So Studio Jade is not part of the SLAM Collaborative. Studio Jade, for this project, is the executive architect, and SLAM is the architect of record. Is that correct, Phil?
Correct. I mean, Chris, I don't need to. I mean, to reiterate, this is a similar delivery method that we did for the Providence Career and Technical Academy, which is about a $100 million job that we did about 2010. So Studio Jade is the managing architect. SLAM Collaborative is the architect of record. Studio Jade will be the engineer of record. The contract will be between the town of South Kingstown and Studio Jade, which Chris and I are negotiating now.
Still haven't seen, well, we're about to start. Still
Yeah,
haven't
we're
seen,
about to
Still haven't
start.
seen your price yet, and then
Yes.
that price goes to town manager Manny and myself.
So before we bleed into that topic, can we stay on the general discussion?
Yeah.
All right. I just have a couple of things that I just want to make sure we don't miss. Not to be a Debbie Downer on this whole thing, but, the bond vote was great. It just creates, there's a lot of things that have to come, right? So we have the hazard field conversion, which needs to start. So that's going to fall into our basket of getting that going. It has to come from the town, right? So, but I could use help on that because there's some drawings and documents and calculations that have to be done, plus appraisals, which I talked to Chris already about to incorporate into their contract because it has to be the appraisals, the blue book, the yellow book appraisals and all that has to go along with it. So that needs to get ongoing. The other thing is funding. We've talked previously about federal funding and other funding resources, but now it's becoming real fast. And I know that the Inflation Reduction Act had a lot in it, and I know you're tracking on that. But over the next few months, as we start getting pricing in, start doing consideration of value engineering, it's going to be important to know if we can grab some of that money.
So we're a couple months away. I think it's important that we start talking about it now, but we still need to define the mechanical systems. We need to do a cost benefit, and left field has to do a life cycle cost benefit analysis. We also need to look and see which ones we could qualify for. But in order to do that, we need to confirm the program of the building first. So that's what Phil and his team are going to do over the next 4 weeks. Once we figure out exactly what the footprint is in general, where everything is going, we can better determine the mechanical systems. And then once we determine the mechanical systems that are feasible, then we can start to look at, does it make sense for us to explore higher sustainable buildings with better federal credits? Can we afford that? Because it's an upfront cost, as you know, Luke. We don't just say, hey, we're doing geothermal, and they say, great, here's $20 million, do geothermal. You got to pay for geothermal. I know. So you have to pay for it, and then, but as a reminder, there's also a lot of other stuff that we have to pay for. So it's that first round of cost estimating will probably come of an independent cost estimating and cost estimating from the CM will happen in tandem, probably end of July, I think is probably a good timeline for that. Maybe August is a good time for that. And once we start to get those numbers, then we can start to do this cost benefit analysis. So there's some work to do, but it's good to remind me that we need to keep it moving, because I'll get Carlos Montanez down here. You've worked with Carlos, I believe, at left field. He'll do a full analysis of what he thinks is the best bang for your buck.
And then if I could, just on the schematic design, are we going off the existing layout that Phil's already done? Are we assuming for pricing purposes at this point? That's the design? Because I know we talked about as stage 3, coming back to it for additional granular community input. There's been some raised concerns here and there, right? We can't solve all ills. And we also have the Chevron parking, which, do we still need a waiver on that? Like a formal waiver?
I
on the
just
Chevron?
had a 45-minute discussion about that today with
Okay.
Dr. De Silva. So yes, if we did not include Chevron a parking waiver in our stage 2 application, you do need to go for a waiver for Chevron parking. You did include it in the stage 2. So it's, all right, it's a much easier ask if you included it in your stage 2 than if you have to come back in stage 3. It's a much easier ask from RIDE legal. You still have to have the public meetings where you talk about Chevron parking versus regular bus parking and things like that. But it is a public process. It'll take months.
It's just a big deal for us because on the land conversion, we're restricted on the amount of room we have,
Yeah.
so.
I don't see any issues with it.
Okay. All right, sorry to take up a lot of your ways, but thanks.
I'm sorry. I do remember writing that letter to RIDE that
And like I said, I just came from a meeting with Dr. De Silva where this came up, and he specifically stated if you put it in your stage 2, it's 100% easier than if you didn't include it in your stage 2. So smart thinking, Phil and team.
These mics are really screwy over here. So I just want to make sure that that is stated on what Mr. Littlefield said, that it was included in our stage 2, that it's on the record for people who are listening.
And for those that don't, I guess we should kind of define Chevron parking as well. Chevron parking is buses parking on an angle on a site as opposed to pulling in a loop. It's really kind of a tedious detail. There are reasons why RIDE likes it as opposed to not liking it, but it's essentially a design element.
That's fine. Does anybody have any other questions? The only question I have as far as publishing estimated project timeline and dates, like must-hit dates, estimated dates, but to make sure we have somewhere that's live, dynamic, and constantly updated. We have a tendency, as most groups do, you put up a project plan and things change and that never gets changed and updated, but I want to make sure ours is like, if possible, gets updated to the minute.
So our schedule has not changed from the schedule that's been on the website now for 2 months. We've had a schedule up on the website. It has not changed. It's a monthly Gantt chart. I think as we bring on Gilbane and they give us some more information about when specific periods of work or start, we can get more granular. But for right now, we're holding the milestone dates of end of July, August for schematic design submission. And that's available on skschoolproject.com. The top right, there's a schedule tab.
And Chris, that aligns with what we've said at a couple public presentations, that we think it's important to come back in the fall, in September, when back to schools occur, that they see what has developed over the summer.
Yeah.
We also did say that there would be some community engagement over the summer for particular things that people may have interest in. They're certainly not going to be able to comment, as Chip and his administration will, on the program validation, but there may be engagement for the aesthetics.
Parking.
Things, some general high-level site things that we are going to be probably narrowing down when we talk about this land swap and get all our other consultants on board. So I do think there's going to be some community engagement during the summer, and certainly this early engagement with Chip and his administration, so that we can work through the summer and then present back to everybody what we're doing in September, so they know what we're going to be developing in design development.
And I think the town halls were successful. Perhaps if we were to continue to hold, especially as we start to get closer to final design, we have another one where we're available to answer questions. And then especially prior to Gilbane starting work, we have another one with the logistics plans and all of that sort of stuff. I should also mention that the website's going to be changing a little bit too. The frequently asked questions are going to start to change to more construction-oriented. We're going to get more design-oriented content on the website. It's less so much about the bond itself and, what people are voting on, as opposed to now what this project's going to look like and how we're going to build it.
So as long as those existing FAQs get archived and not removed, they need to stay up. And even if they evolve, we need to be able to reference, because we want, again, full transparency with everything. As far as any community forums going forward, I really want to make sure we plan those out thoughtfully and we publish them ahead of time. And again, going back to this project plan, that they're put in so that it's not, okay, we're going to do on Wednesday. It's we're going to do in a month from now, so people can block their schedules. As we know, time goes by very fast now. We're already here, and it's already, the second week of May. So we want to make sure that we're planning thoughtfully ahead of time so that as many people as possible can listen, tune in, live stream it, do the hybrid like we did that last time. I thought we had valuable feedback then. So I just want to make sure we plan out thoughtfully.
So perhaps maybe at our, no, it's not till item number 7, but just food for consideration. Maybe we consider at the next school building committee meeting for me to bring an updated schedule and see if it's changed, see if we can throw some target dates. They're not going to be finalized dates now a couple months in advance, but we can say, second week of September, after people have been back for a little bit, got their kids back in school, we're planning on having a meeting, something like that. We know that for a lot of the engagement's going to be difficult, first week of school when kids will get back, so we'll plan thoughtfully around that. But I think that's a good agenda item to include.
Anybody else? No? Okay. All right, so we'll move on to the discussion action consultant RFQs.
So we will have 2 consultant RFQs that I'll be working with the town manager and Julie Mason on. The first is going to be for a commissioning agent. For those that aren't aware, a commissioning agent is a third-party agency separate from the architectural team, separate from the construction management team, that validates your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing design, and B, also ensures that once that design is built, that it's functioning to the incredibly specific requirements of your MEP spec. Again, that's mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. It is a RIDE requirement that a third-party testing firm comes in. They are incredibly important to making sure that your building functions in the way that it was designed. They also handle other things like training of Brian's staff on how to use systems. They manage that training as well. Left field, a bit of a differentiator about us is that we have specific people on our team that are MEP specialists. So we'll be bringing in Carlos, who you guys met during the interview. Carlos is a professor of mechanical engineering at Mass Maritime. He is a very thorough mechanical, electrical, and plumbing consultant. We will do a few things. Carlos will review the specifications for the MEP systems. He will perform a design review. We've also talked about how he's going to look at life cycle cost analysis and see which systems are best. And he'll also be managing that commissioning process pretty thoroughly. Carlos will review the RFQ at the same time that he's reviewed multiple of them before. At the same time, Luke will. The second RFQ that we'll be putting out is for a Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessment. These are requirements by the Department of Environmental Management. A Phase 1 environmental site assessment is the first. Essentially, that's taking a historical look at your site about what its previous uses were for, other items like that. There's also some preliminary testing of soils. And then a Phase 2 is actually providing guidance and instruction to the civil engineer and the landscape architect about how to manage the conditions on site. So if you're moving this soil, where can you move it on site to create the least amount of environmental impact? Both the Phase 1 and Phase 2 environmental site assessments are sent to the Department of Environmental Management for their review and approval. I should also mention that during the Phase 1 and Phase 2, there are public meetings that are required by law where we will go out into the public. During the Phase 1, it's honestly for us to solicit information from the public. The Phase 1 is to say, what do you know about this site? What have you seen on this site? What are your concerns about this site? And then the Stage 2 public meetings are for us to put out our results. So there are public meetings that are associated with those two items. The environmental engineer generally handles all the outreach. There's specific ways that the Department of Environmental Management require it. However, it will require some liaising with Luke Murray.
And are those under the same, I'm assuming those are under all the same open meetings laws where they have to be posted in certain places, 48 hours ahead of time, have to be publicly posted in all our usual places?
So no, because the technical meetings, and if the full building committee's there, yes, because we're a public body, but as far as technical meetings that are output to the community, usually there's certain requirements that DEM would want to have as far as that, but it doesn't fall into formal OMA. So we'll make sure whatever gets posted appropriately, because the whole point is to solicit that input, right? They want to see the interaction. My question on the contract, though, is many times the Phase 1, Phase 2 is under an architectural engineering contract. That wouldn't fall under Studio Jade and SLAM's contract?
It's not the way that your contract was written with Studio Jade for Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Okay.
I always like the owner to be in control of that. We don't want, you need to be in control of your site. It's your site. So
All right.
that's my recommendation on that. We could.
I'm just trying to cut down a number of contracts.
Yeah,
That's
no,
fine.
I understand. We have the hazardous materials consultant is under Studio Jade. That's one that sometimes owners take on. We have Studio Jade doing that. Because of ownership of the site, I would recommend that the town has the environmental engineers under their contract.
And then we have, the other thing, the other elephant in the room is the town does not have a formal contract with Left Field yet, correct?
No, we're still working off our purchase order that was extended by this. We're still working on school department money right now.
So we need to get that moving. Architect, you're telling us the commissioning agent, which is a little further down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Phase 1, Phase 2, anybody else? And the CMAR.
Those are the 5 contracts that we'll need
You
to.
better get your shovel out with the money, right? Which is a whole nother component, because we need to determine cash flow. So we're going to need a cash flow projection on how much we're going to be outlaying, because
We
the bills are gonna add
do
up.
those all the time. I'd be
Yeah.
happy to get one to you by our next school building committee meeting. It'll be general because we don't have firm numbers from the construction manager yet, but it'll certainly be enough to figure out how much you need to get on this first round.
Perfect.
Anybody else?
And just to refresh the committee's memory, Left Field has already bid on the second portion of this work. It was part of the RFQ-P that went out to OPM firms. So extensionally, you guys approved us you asked us to submit pricing for Phase 1 and Phase 2. And we'd be coming back to you with that same proposal that we submitted for the Phase 2.
A couple of questions that have come up. Well, once again, I get a lot of calls and emails and so forth. So let's give rough dates when we could expect the process actually starting. A shovel in the ground, maybe a year that this could open, a year that the athletic fields could open, and so forth. I'm not talking hard dates, just so people can conceptualize where we're going with this.
I think we have those on that project plan, but to Jim's point, we need to highlight them, that we need milestones that we can really drive home and blow up and say, this is when, because just what you said, shovel in the ground, the votes hadn't even like fully come in yet, and someone was asking me, when's the shovel in the ground? So if we can like zoom in on certain dates and really drive them home so people can have expectations met.
I think along those lines, one of the things that came up today was it's the athletic field is one low-hanging fruit. And I know we have a perspective date on that, but that might require additional discussion whether we want to fast-track that project separately. And that's for the school building committee to discuss, and what the feasibility is to do that, to get the building down. We don't have, I mean, it's a dead stick at this point, so we could feasibly move into that site earlier if needed.
So currently, just so this group is aware, we have, in terms of shovels in the ground, well, we were talking about some major dates. We're talking about in January of 2025, ordering long lead items. These are items like generators, mechanical systems, things like that. We could also expect some early packages to also start roughly around that time. Those would be things like your site work, things like that. And then in terms of full-scale construction, our current schedule has May or June of 2025, which is when we expect this to really start in full, and then ending in June of 2027. I will say that all three construction management firms presented ways to condense that schedule, and they also, this schedule that I just talked about also assumes that we're doing the fields last. There are opportunities, as Luke said, that did come up during the construction manager interviews of us being able to deliver those fields ahead of time with some, I forgot exactly who said off the top of my head, I'll have to review, but some CMs also even felt it was possible, as long as our pricing is correct after this first round of cost estimates, that we would be able to start construction on the field complex at Curtis Corner after next fall season, if we have a productive summer. So we'll have to see on that once fall sports wrap up. There is the potential, but that's a school building committee decision. We're not, right now we're just going off the approved RIDE Stage 2 schedule. So it's something for this group to consider.
It's my energy. So to another point with project planning, when it comes to, I've had a lot of people bring up other funding sources, especially around green. Is that also, if we're going out looking for grants, if we're going out looking for other funding sources, is that factored into into things? Because obviously we want to get the most bang for our buck. And take as much off of our taxpayers' shoulders as possible.
So yes, that the schedule will not be affected by that. But what will be affected by that is, again, we need to confirm the educational program, and we need to confirm basically the building footprints, confirm with Gilbane what it's going to cost to build, so then we can make an analysis decision. Do we have the money to pay for these expensive, generally, systems up front, getting reimbursed without sacrificing other parts of the building? Because it's great if we can get some of this stuff funded by the feds, but if we can only build you 3/4 of the amount of space that you want because we have to front the money for these systems up front, then it becomes a different equation. I think with our budget that we currently have, it's we should be, let me put it this way, it's under consideration. There are other projects I work on where I can tell you right now that because of their budgets, they are not going to qualify for any of these because they do not have the money to spend on these systems up front. They're going to be struggling just to get their educational program in. We're not in that case here, but we do need to do due diligence before, and that'll be a school building committee decision as well, probably, is about, do we want to pay for this up front and maybe not build part of the building, because it's going to be expensive.
So, and to that point, is there someone involved in one of the collective teams that is out seeking those now or tomorrow or whenever the contract's signed, right?
So Carlos does these for every school district that we work in. I'll present a deliverable for a typical project that we do. We did a great one for Whittier Tech. That project didn't end up moving forward, but it basically made the argument for geothermal specifically on that project because of reimbursements. We did just also do one for Warwick. Warwick is not going to be pursuing federal reimbursements because of their budget. So I'll show you what a typical deliverable looks like so you guys can have an idea, but we're still a few months away because I need to figure out the building footprint with Phil first.
Understood, but just know that these are the kind of questions that us lay folk are getting, and it's very difficult to answer because I am not an architect, an engineer, or an OPM.
No, I understand. I want to just set expectations that these conversations are going to be had. But we don't have answers right yet because there's a lot of pieces that need to fall into place before we can even consider if we can meet some of the federal requirements.
So one suggestion along those lines, because Kate's right, many in this community are very conscious of energy savings, the incentives and other things they're prioritizing it, probably more than other communities. And to our early discussion on even community forums, we might want to have a separate community forum just on energy on the building. So Carlos comes, explains to the community what that means and what the decision points are, and so they fully understand, what the predicament that we may be in of deciding, do we sacrifice, do we not, or do we have to sacrifice at all, and what the decision points are.
So we also, I think it's a great idea. We also need to be cognizant of the federal budgetary process. Just because something's in a budget doesn't mean that it's necessarily, just because it's been funded doesn't necessarily mean, because it's been passed doesn't necessarily mean it's funded. So wind power is a great example. Those have been passed, but they've not been funded yet. So that's an example of why you saw all these great wind projects starting up, but now they're all dying off because the funding hasn't come through yet. So it's something on a federal level we need to keep our eyes on, because just because something's passed doesn't mean it's funded.
Well, and to his point, that conversation needs to happen. Yes, it's happening here in a public meeting, but maybe 10 people are probably listening at the moment. But if we have public community forums on the topic, the people who are invested in that topic will tune in, and we can have those conversations, just as many and often as possible.
So I'll talk to Gilbane and Phil offline, and we'll figure out what a good date, get a rough date for when we're prepared to have that conversation with the community. Because you are right, I get through the Contact Us tab on the website, I think probably 3 of the most memorable emails I received were all about green initiatives, essentially, as part of the building, sustainable initiatives as part of the building.
All right, anybody else? Any questions, comments? All right. So we'll move on. Do we need to take an action on that particular one at the moment?
No, just wanted to give you an update on the RFQs, and we'll talk about it as an agenda item for 2 weeks, coming back with those RFQs.
Okay. So item 6, discussion action, legal counsel for project labor agreement study.
So this is something that was discussed at a previous meeting, but I did just want to confirm the school building committee's guidance on this. So due to Rhode Island state law, you are not required to go out to have a public bid for any legal services, but especially not for a project labor agreement study. There are 2, maybe 3 firms that do project labor agreement studies here in Rhode Island. It's a very specialized practice area. We have already solicited pricing from 2 out of those 3. The third has been non-responsive to date, but I will re-ping them. However, there was a question from a while ago about whether we want this to be a public procurement for legal studies. I really don't see a lot of pros with this. It's a specialized law practice area. There are a lot of school projects going on in Rhode Island right now. These labor study agreements cost between $10,000 and $12,000. It's not big money. I'm worried that if we go out and we put out a general call for legal studies for a project labor agreement studies, we're going to, A, get unqualified people bidding it, and B, that we're the firms that really do this work aren't going to submit proposals because they're already busy enough. So I'm wondering if the direction is to go with a full public procurement, advertise for it, or if I should be bringing you all proposals from the firms most qualified to do this work and for this group to review it.
Does anyone have an opinion on that?
I would say if it doesn't have to go out for a bid or whatever, sorry, I would say if it doesn't have to go out for any kind of bid or process or anything, if he can bring us the people, they know what they're doing. I think that's the way we should go.
There'll still be a process. It's just not as formalized as some of the other procurements. And no surprise there, right? Lawyers figured out a way to make it easier for you to hire lawyers.
There you go, you're red. I'm afraid to pick it up.
Okay. All right, thank you. So this would be similar to the process of selecting the architect, that we're going to be requesting proposals. We're not going to be putting out specifications, and people have to put in a bid, and then if it's procurement, then we have to. Then we're bound with to go with the lowest bidder. Is that correct?
So no, you're not bound to pick going. It'll be different, very different than the architect, though. Architect is a very long process. And essentially, I'd be writing a letter to several firms explaining what we're doing, that we need a project labor agreement study. I'd be asking them to confirm that scope of work, provide a very brief work plan about how they plan on doing it, and submitting a price. It's very typical of this type of procurement. It's generally how it's how I've done them everywhere, actually.
Okay.
I've never done a different way of doing it.
It sounds fine to me.
I was going to say, if there's a standard operating procedure, that's what we should be following.
I also say, this is different than legal counsel for the project. It would probably behoove the town council if they can use their own legal counsel, or they can hire legal counsel for the project. But generally, these projects do have legal counsel.
Well, so that leads me to my other question is, I mean, who's paying the bill, right? I'm assuming it's going to be the town side since the project's now a go, in which case we do have legal services that could be procured under our existing legal contract or our solicitor services as well with one of these. $10,000 purchase, just so most people know, that's usually our threshold where we'd be tripping into a bid type situation. So it's not an absorbent amount of money. We award purchases all the time under a 3-bid system or MPA for this type of award, and Brian, feel free to weigh in on that as the finance director. So I don't have a problem with it, but the mechanics of it, as far as selection, we can make a recommendation to the town, but it's ultimately up to the town to make that final, and the council to make that final selection. So it's really what they're comfortable with. So Jim?
Jim, before you get going, I just want to call attention to time. It's 5:02. We usually keep to an hour. We're good to go over, but I just want to make sure people who are watching and anybody at the table, it is 5:02.
I will check with the town solicitor who answers to the town council directly, and just see if this is way out of his scope, or if there's something that his firm can handle, and what would it entail, if he could.
Sounds good. Anybody else have any input they want to give on this particular topic? All right. Since we're going to be doing some investigation, we'll just leave the item as is. At the moment, I'm seeing that we neglected to put public comment on our agenda. Happy to have somebody open it up if there's someone here who would like to make a public comment. No? Do you want to? Okay. That's fine. Can we get a motion to?
I'll make a motion to have public comment added to our agenda.
Second? Can I get a second? Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll try to keep this real brief, you may have already answered it, but in case not, and for people who are watching, lawyers are paid to be paranoid. The deadline that I'm concerned about is June 30. There are 3 council meetings, May 27, June 11, and June 25. May 28, sorry. That's right, May 28. I personally would not want to have something coming before the council that then has to go to RIDE on the 25th. So is that time frame doable? Is somebody on top of this with RIDE? How is that going to work?
So RIDE actually has just recently changed the bonus point formula. I know that the school department, Ryan Kilpatrick, got a letter. As long as we have the architect under contract by June 30th, we are okay, which is very, very feasible. But Phil, you and I should get started right away. And to representatives of Gilbane, I would also please provide your AIA documents as soon as possible after this meeting, because with this award today, we'd like to see your first draft of the AIA documents as well, because those are going to need probably a couple weeks, I would assume, with your legal department to review them as well. So we should be targeting that. What's that? Sorry, what were the dates again? May, June?
Meetings in June 11, June 25.
So June 11th, we should be targeting for having all of our contracts ready and approved and ready to go, which means
And we think that's a reasonable amount of time?
it is.
Okay.
We should also note that we have some leeway with the construction manager contract as well. We can award just based on pre-construction for the time being, which is a set fee as we negotiate other parts of the contract. So that's another way of getting them on board much quicker, because they just put a flat fee for pre-construction per month on their contract that they submitted with their bids. So that's an easier way of getting them under contract as well. We don't have to negotiate every single line item of their general conditions.
You're looking at me like you want me to agree to that. I don't have the skill set. So I'm just
as
want
an
to
example,
make
it's what we just did in Warwick. It's what we did in North Providence too.
Okay. But and that is going through with the town though, right? Okay, I was going to say that's a town conversation because the town's cutting the check. I'm already public enemy number 1. All right. No more public comment? All right, so setting next meeting and agenda items. Chris, you've already kind of made note of a handful of agenda items that we need to make sure that we have coming up at our next meetings. Does anybody else have any items that they want to make sure gets brought to this table for our next meeting?
I'm wondering if Thursday the 16th, I know it's only a week, but it would give me a little bit of an upper hand on exerting pressure on some of our consultants to get me the documents as quickly as possible. I also think it would make the town council happier to get the documents to review probably quicker. I know it's only a week out, but I'd like to continue to be aggressive if possible.
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, I may not be here, but you can all work without me.
Chris, realistically, what do you think you'll have by that meeting to consider? Because we need time to review the architecture scope of work, and that's negotiated. We got a week, and it's almost Friday.
So I would have the 2 consultant RFQs for approval to go out to bid. But I guess it goes to town council now, doesn't it?
What's that? Well, yeah, I mean, that would actually, it's an RFQ, so we don't really need an authorization unless you need some direction from the school building committee. We can develop those and get them to market.
Okay.
It's really when the recommendation comes back. So I'm just trying to dial the reality here. I don't want to put pressure on unnecessarily on everybody if the reality is we have a lot of other work to do.
So I guess the question would be, what on that list should be addressed between now and the 16th? Or what can wait till the
So I think
23rd.
So I think Luke makes a good point, actually, as I'm kind of getting a little bit, now that we're switching over to town council, it's a little bit of a different process, so I think Luke makes a good point. I would say that by the 16th, I should be able to have draft AIA documents back from both Phil and Gilbane, and this committee can review them prior to negotiations beginning to take place by the town manager and myself. That's really, yeah, I think that's really the only
And
thing.
then, and then that would go to the town council on the 27th. So, right, so there's 28th, sorry. Oh, because Memorial Day. So that, there's 2 weeks there. So do you need to do that by the 16th, or can it be the 23rd?
Yeah, I think, could you email that out to the committee? Because, I mean, we're going to need time to review. If anyone wants to weigh in, those aren't going to be small documents.
Yeah, I think you're right, the 23rd makes the most sense after having this discussion.
Yeah, but we can put it on the agenda, presumably, unless somebody has some really big issues, which, you know, you're using boilerplate AIA for most of it, right? So that's, most of this is in, 90% is probability there.
Yeah.
All right, so to clarify, our next meeting is the 23rd, and we're going to be getting some documents to review prior to that meeting. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Yep.
How about for my internal deadline, I will use the 16th as my date to have everything sent out to this committee and to legal counsel for review.
Anybody else have any comments, questions on that? So something that we did want to discuss with the full body is going forward into the summer months, changing the time of these meetings, especially with school not being in session and many people not wanting to have the Thursday evening meeting on their books. So there was discussion about potentially moving it into an early morning meeting for the summer. I'm clear and open for various suggestions. We're thinking June, July, and August.
We have a standing owner meeting at 9 a.m. on every 2 weeks on Monday mornings.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend 9 a.m. Monday morning if that works.
I'm just checking the chamber's calendar, just to make sure that would be okay with that.
I know there was some folks who would have preferred it before 9. I'm open either way. I'll just block my time, but I defer to the rest of the committee. I have people looking at me in various ways. I don't know how to interpret it. But I do know Mr. Palizzetti also had expressed before he went out of town that he would prefer early morning, like early morning. I'm able to make whatever
Are those
work.
meetings going to count at, like, so in other words, are those meetings public meetings? And the reason I'm asking is if they're not, like, we could have these meetings at 8 and then that could just follow up on that meeting, if that's if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly.
So the OPM, the standing OPM has really just been informational, getting myself and Brian and typically Luke up to speed. So we could utilize, you're saying we could utilize that time slot and make it our public meeting. And so we don't need that space anymore, or we can go earlier for the summer months. These will all be our regular public school building meetings.
I can do earlier than 9 a.m. I can't do earlier than 9 a.m. prior to school letting out, though.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. Once we get to schools out and schedules shift.
Yeah, early is early. Yeah, I do 7:30 now, once a month, so I'm happy to do a 7:30
Okay.
here too.
Do you have an opinion, sir?
I don't care if it's 3 a.m., just whatever time you do it, I'll show up, and my staff will too. Whatever, it would be good to have the whole team here, so if Dave wants to do it before his job, I'm fine with that. Whatever you want to do it, I'm good.
So what I'll do is get a general consensus of the time for our next meeting, and then we'll set the summer schedule going forward at our next meeting. All right. But as of right now, our very next meeting, May 23rd, 4 PM here. I think that's it, unless anybody has anything else to say.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh,
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.